Live.
So are we live? Tell me when we're ready. All right. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. We're going to paint this kind of quiet little scene, Comfort and Light, I call it. This is a painting I originally did a number of years ago, and it's of a little kind of very familiar scene, kind of right around the corner from where I used to live. So compositionally, it's fairly simple, but what I think that is really dynamic about it is the mark making in the foreground. I think turned out really nice. I like the contrast of this really bright kind of emerald green and then this kind of softer, more muted tones in the tree line, and this sort of little meandering pathway, almost a suggestion of a pathway that goes back into this distance right here, which is kind of the focal point. This is one of those paintings that I think doesn't have quite such a very, very defined focal point, which I think is sometimes kind of interesting. And today I'm on a white pastel matte. I decided just to keep it really simple today. I am not doing an underpainting. I'm just going to go straight for straight pastel on this white pastel matte, which is something that I don't ordinarily do. Most of you guys that have painted with me quite a bit know that I usually do not paint on a white paper. It's either a toned paper or I'm going to do some kind of underpainting to cut the white of the pastel paper. But today, I'm just going to dive right into to this on the white pastel matte. If you are following along, you can see that I've got a let's see, a 12 by 12 image area here that I'm going to paint on. So I have lots of space all around. I went ahead and used a full sheet. I'll probably cut up these small this side over here and do some small pieces on the scrap. But I do like to have a fairly nice big area to practice making marks, especially on this piece where it's really reliant on the making. The other thing that I'm going to do just a little bit differently today is I'm going to do some drawing. I'm just going to sketch out my composition with a Create-A-Color monolith pencil before I start with the pastel. Now that's something that I do quite a lot. You can use just a 2B pencil. It doesn't have to be anything special. But I do happen to like the way that this Create-A-Color monolith goes down onto the pastel paper. Okay, so we're going to adjust the camera and we're going to move it closer as I'm painting, and I'm going to get going. All right, so let's see. Up. Yep, bring the whole thing. Let's see. Yeah, move it to the side a little bit. I don't get in the way quite as much. Okay, let's see. I'm going to just check the camera, make sure my whole image is in here. Okay. All right. It looks good. All right, so this composition is really about the earth. And I like to think about that as my painting about the earth, or is it about the sky? And most of my paintings are about the earth. I just winds up that way. It's not something that's super intentional on my part, but it's what I gravitate towards. I'm just going to get a couple little ideas in here, really nice and loose, of what I want with this kind of foliage mass that's back here. Just really very, very loose and gestural. It's kind of a tongue twister word. There we go. And it's also rather, as I'm doing this, I feel how centered this is, but I think I'm going to work that out. I think that it ends up balancing itself. Just in the composition as it moves forward. Get this kind of, these grasses are really pretty. You could see that the actual reference photo is kind of lackluster. It's not much. And I really enjoy using photo reference that wow, there's just a hint there of something that I want. I would like to have something that there's some space in there for me as an artist. If I'm using a piece of photo reference that's, you know, got some lots of grand beauty in it, usually I find it not as satisfying to paint, not as interesting. So I'm gonna usually look for something that's more of that quiet beauty, finding the unusual in the usual, that kind of idea. All right, so there we go. That's enough for my sketch. Now, just starting out, I usually start out with the biggest, easiest shape. And for me, in this case, it's this area of the green grass. And again, I'm also going to think what's the easiest for me to start out with color-wise. It's the local color of that green. So that's where I'm going to start. And I'm going to start pretty bright because I tend to start out brighter and then in the process of my painting settle things down as I go along. I'm just testing out here and I can see I want something a little bit brighter than that and a little bit lighter in value. So I'm just kind of searching around in my sticks for the right thing. Still haven't quite found it. No, maybe that one. That one's a maybe. A little softer than I want, but it is nice and bright. And see, I've got a whole little progression going here. So I think I'm going to start with it. So what I'm going to do, it's a little softer than I want. So to compensate for that, I am going to come in with a pretty light touch and kind of glaze something in here. Just really light. Now I'm already going to start making suggestions of this grass by kind of with the negative shapes, just a little bit. See the big marks that I'm making? Pretty big marks. Don't be afraid to get in there and really. This paper is so accepting of those big marks. Really grabs on to them. So I'm already kind of getting a grammar going for this. All right, that's nice. Okay, what's the next biggest, easiest thing? For me, it's this mass of foliage back here, and it's this kind of lovely gold. And I think that I can head to something like my yellow 13 that I love. This is a unison. That's a little orange for me today. I'm feeling it. So I'm going to step down from that and go with this stick that I just happen to have sitting around. Actually, it's weird. And now you can see I'm coming along really light, super light touch, really just, again, kind of glazing, just skittering the whole side of the stick over the paper. And this paper is just like glass in a way. It just takes it so nice. And just get that in there, just like that. And now what? I think I'm going to start establishing this foreground. It's pretty dark, and what I think is interesting about the painting more than the reference material is that I went ahead and I I made a gradation down here. I made it darker here. And what that does, what that gradation does is it draws the viewer's eye up here to my area of interest. If I didn't have the gradation, it's not nearly as interesting, and I'm not as drawn to this area here. So I want to get that a little bit darker. So I'm going to come in with some, this is, maybe that's too dark to start out with. How about that? This is sort of an olive green. So I'm going to get some of that in here. And I'm going to still stay with a pretty light touch, because I want to, eventually I'm going to bring some other colors in here, and I don't want to get too much on here too soon. If I apply the pastel too thickly too soon, I don't. It's a little harder to get all the color that I want in. So just again, a really nice light touch. Now I think I'm ready to get some dark in here in this underneath the trees. And for that, I'm going to head to my good friend Terry Ludwig and pick out a couple of his darks. This is that dark eggplant. And still, I'm going to still keep a fairly light touch going, because I don't really have to make a commitment to anything. I am going to use this and go ahead and use a little kind of a broken line to start into my idea of tree trunks, but really light. And I'm only doing that just to kind of give myself a little map of where I'm at. I wouldn't really need to do this, but it kind of gives me a and I'm thinking about the bottoms of this foliage being kind of light and airy. Now I can come in over here and got some dark. Here and over here where this other foliage mass, a tree shape, is coming in from the left-hand side of my composition. I've got to be careful here. I don't want it to look like it's cut off. So I need enough in the composition that it makes sense. I don't want a weird tangency right there. Okay. So now I'm going to start bringing in some other colors. This is I love this color. It's kind of a rose madder. It's a muted color, very grayed. And you'll see as I'm working on this, I'm going to move this color throughout this piece pretty, it's going to, I'm going to put it in a lot of different areas of the piece, so it ties, it's going to be a very harmonizing color in the painting. Bring it down in here and down in here in my foreground. All right, that's looking good. Now what else do I want to do? What else do I want to do? I'm going to bring in some this is kind of it's kind of an olive color. Putting some of it in here. here underneath the trees a little bit too. And this is a nice kind of a reddish brown, and I'm seeing that in the foliage up in here. Is everybody hearing us okay? Do we know?
Yeah, everyone can hear you. We are working on the lag settings, but
Okay.
mostly it's fine.
Okay.
And you have 40 minutes left.
Okay, great. Plenty of time. All right, now I think I'm going to start working on the sky. Now I've kind of got everything kind of going, and I really need to see where I'm at with the sky before I can really start playing around and adjusting the color and the value. So that sky, I'm going to start with something a little bit darker, because it's got some the photo reference suggests these kind of stormy clouds. I'm going to pull those in between my tree shapes and over here. And I'm not worried about staying in the lines. You can see I'm letting color drift from one shape to the next. And I definitely want to be doing that. I'm going to bring this purple, it's too dark. A bit too dark in value. Something like this I think is better. I wish I had a bigger piece of it. Do I? Maybe not. What's this? That's darker. Yep, too dark. That's why I like to have this area on the side of my paper, because I don't know. A lot of times my pastels will be dirty. I can't tell the color until I get it up there. So definitely want to have a little test spot. So you can see I'm moving my hand in a lot of different directions to get a nice sort of play of the marks. Now, I know what I want to do. I want to bring in some more darks, and I'm going to do that with my blue spruce. I love this color for darks. It's not black. Sometimes on camera, this blue spruce appears black on camera, but it's not. It's a very rich indigo blue. Really, really pretty. Can kind of see it maybe if I give it one of these. And so I'm going to add it into that Terry Ludwig, so that my darks have that kind of richness that I'm after. I don't want to say one value mass with just one color. I want to have a painterly mix within my value masses. So this blue spruce is allowing me to get that. And come in here, and I come down in here a little bit. I'm just playing with this down here is really have a little fun with the grass. So I'm making some little marks that are kind of glazing, but also mixing in some, using the edge of the pastel, so I'm getting these really delicate lines that are suggesting the grass at the same time. Okay. Well, maybe a little bit of this gold down in here too. All right. Now I think I'll finish up that sky, at least get the light blue that I want. I want the nice, really light blue in the sky. And it can come across and start picking out some just really letting the pastel play. Okay. And maybe I'll even mix in a little bit different blue in here too. Okay, now I need to get a little bit more pigment on that foliage. So now I'm going to come a little bit heavier this time, just a little bit heavier. And I want to make sure I have a sort of underside of the
That
email.
nothing related to pastel.
No, I don't think so. Okay, now I'm using my finger just a little bit. And I'm always trying to be really selective about that. I don't really want to overdo that, but because I'm using the white paper this time, I'm feeling the need, so that's okay. All right, now this right along the horizon, I've got a lighter, almost white. I'm going to use something that's, I'm going to use this, it's a little too yellow. Yeah, that is too, what do I want, what do I want? Maybe that. Yeah, give it a go. This is a really light, creamy yellow, not white. Kind of come in here and get some of these little
Carol is asking, Marla, did you start with harder pastels? I thought the green was a really soft one, but I'm not sure.
The green, okay, in that case, typically I would want to start hard and work towards softer ones if I can, but I didn't have the right stick that was the right color that I wanted to use. So what I did was I compensated by coming along with a really, really light touch in this green area. Now the next thing I'm going to be working on is coming back into that green with some additional colors, different kinds of greens. But it was a fairly soft pastel that I started out with. So if I don't have the right stick, what I have to do is I have to look, okay, is it hard, is it soft? And what do I have to, you know, how do I have to change my stroke to compensate? So now I'm getting a nice kind of atmospheric feel up in here that I want really after that in this piece. So that's looking good. So now it's time to come back in with some more action in here. So this is the fun part of this piece. So I'm going to come in with some different kinds of greens. I'm using this is a softer pastel, I'm using a pretty active pressure here. Don't be afraid of it. Big strokes, it's okay. I've got a big expanse here to deal with. So now this is the original one that I started out with. I'm going to come back in and restate some of this. Just kind of a calligraphy. Maybe back in here, just kind of suggest that green kind of meanders back into my middle, that distant area. How are we doing on time?
You have 30 minutes left.
Oh, okay. Okay, so I'm coming back in here with this Terry Ludwig, wanting to darken up some of this down here. I don't want to go too crazy. I don't want to get it too dark. All right. Let's see, what's that? What's that? Maybe this. So I'm really concentrating on getting a mix of scale of marks and kinds of marks in here so that it's really suggesting the grass. A bit more of this pink in here. I love this. Love this color. Really is going to work nicely against the green. Okay. Okay. What else? What else? What else? I'm saving things for the end. I always do that. I'm going to save the really fun stuff for myself. I know it's going to make it really work. See, I'm carving some of these grasses out with the negative shapes by doing that. These little marks. I think that's a little too much. So I'm going to come back in with some of this green and just settle that Terry Ludwig back a little bit. Picking out some negative shapes back in here. So I want to restate some of those tree branches, trunks, just really, very carefully, cautiously. I don't want to overdo it. I'm using a new pastel for that. It's fun. I think I'm going to come in with a little bit of this blue. Is this what I used? It's not what I used. Is this? Just soften it just a tiny bit. All right. All right, now it is time, I think, to get some of these really lights in this grass. Really get my viewer's eye to that area I want you to go. Just very gradually get you there. And soften that up with the pastel over the top. And then right back in here, I want something a little bit lighter in value. This light pink. So that's really, really, really kind of ethereal back there. That works. Okay, now I still think that this could go even lighter right here. And let's see. Do we have no questions today? Nobody has questions.
Somebody asked about your iPad stand, so I said I would reserve that to you, just because you're not using it this time.
Oh, right.
But,
Oh, funny. Yeah, people like that stand, man. It is good. Okay, so I'm really getting that area developed. Now, I'm going to bring in some red into the dark underside here, because I had that in the original painting and it really seemed to give it a nice pop. And I'm going to bring some of it down in here. Now I'm going to start working on the light in this grass, and I reserved that to the end because well, it's going to be fun to do, for one thing, and I also want to make sure I don't get it too light. So this is a sort of, see how dark that is compared to a white. Of course, you can see the difference of the white and the paper and it. So it's fairly dark. And I don't want to overdo this. I don't want to put too much of this in.
Donna says, I'm just enjoying watching how you put the pastel down, which I think is a lot. That's exactly what I'm doing, so. But I'm not trying to paint it, so.
Yeah, this one has a really great opportunity for mark making and playing with the scale of the strokes. Really get in there and mess around with it. So this is kind of glazing over the top of that kind of I lost my words. Sometimes it's a little challenging to paint and speak.
Wendy says that she just watched your lesson on color and value, which was so interesting. But she's wondering if you could describe your color scheme a little bit. And she mentions as an example, triadic.
Triadic. So there's all kinds of set schemes. Triadic would be 3 colors that are equidistant on the color wheel. And then, you could do a secondary scheme, which would be the secondary color. I mean, there's all kinds of ways of building color schemes. I don't really paint that way. For the most part, I don't set up unless I'm just wanting to really challenge myself, then I might play around with some idea like that. But on the whole, I'm not really, I don't really focus on that. What I like to do in my paintings, make sure that there's some color dominance and value dominance and shape dominance. Because that's really the, because you can kind of make any kind of colors work, but I'm trying to orchestrate, usually to think about as I'm orchestrating the values of whatever colors I am using. And now in terms of, how do I choose my colors? People ask me that a lot. How do you choose? What I like to think about is I'm going to choose something. I'm going to start somewhere, and then from there I'm going to put something down, and then I'm going to respond to it. I'm going to put something else down, and I'm going to respond to it. In this case, I let the local color initially drive my choice, but then from there I'm building a painting, so not necessarily trying to stick to what I see, but make the best painting from the reference material. Does that help? I think it's a wise thing to play with the idea of color schemes, especially if you're not, you don't have as much sort of mileage behind you, because you want to start, you know, kind of getting a vocabulary of color to draw upon. When I did the 100 Variation series, that was just such a great opportunity to do exactly that.
Another question is, how do you work out values? Some people discuss using red or green transparent sheets. How do you work out values and tell the ranges?
I don't think that those red things were.
Could be why you don't. I've never seen you.
I don't, well, they don't, you know, I think whatever works for you is what works, right? It never really helped me that much. So to me, it's, we're comparing. That's what all we're doing. No matter whether it's value, whether it's hue, whatever it is, that's what we're doing. One thing that I have worked with students with is I print out a value scale that is equivalent to the ones that I have you guys make, a 6-value scale, and it's like a little swatch tester, so you can actually mark right on it and see what value that color that you've chosen is relative to the other colors. But the thing with value, just like with intensity and anything else, its value is relative. So it's all about what is, something is only dark next to something that's light, something's only light next to something that's dark, and so on. So you just have to go definitely case by case and compare. Okay, this is kind of getting there. I'm going to switch to a little harder pastel for some of this grass, just some of this calligraphy.
Wendy says, yeah, thanks, that helps heaps. Thanks, Marla. I like the idea of starting with local color and then working from there.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy. It's easiest. Obviously, that's not always what I'm doing, but you know, I think there's a couple of modes when we're painting. We can invent color, but we can also push color. And for me, I'm usually pushing the color. So like in this, obviously, I've pushed the color. Like, oh yeah, that's the sort of emeraldy green. I'm gonna like take that idea, I'm gonna use that idea, I'm gonna push it. So yeah, that's definitely.
Kath says, your reference in this lesson, I mean, she's looking at what you're looking at.
Yeah.
Is often, and often in other previous lessons as well, it's a painting that you did prior. Do you recommend that we do that as a way to loosen up, perhaps? She's just curious about why you choose that method of...
Well, a couple of things with regard to that. first of all, it's something I'm familiar with painting, so I know where I'm headed with it. So it makes, just for me, from an instructor's point of view, it lets me more easily talk through it. If I were to come up here and paint something for you guys that I had never painted before, I would be, you know, I wouldn't have, I wouldn't be able to talk as easily through what I'm doing, so if that makes any sense. But yes, I really highly recommend that that you paint what you're painting, that you do your pieces more than once, and that you use one of the things that you guys probably see me on with the YouTube channel is paint small pieces. Those are great, great to develop larger pieces from, because you've already, you know, kind of got yourself, your feet wet with it. You kind of know where you're headed, and so those are really great opportunities there to really expand on what you're learning. See, I'm having fun with this. I'm involved in painting it. Okay. Yeah, and the lesson pieces, I was just talking to Chris tonight about them. They wind up being a little bit different than pieces. If I were to be painting by myself in the studio, this would be different than the way it's turned out right now, because I'm going to have my music on. I'm going to be just wailing away at it, and, you know, significantly different way. So that's something I try to sort of mediate that for you guys. I try to like stay as authentic to the, you know, the way I would paint something as I possibly can. But I know there's a difference.
Is there a way to detect the luminosity of a particular color compared to the others?
So
Luminosity versus value? I don't know.
luminosity has to do with the color's intensity. Yes. And luminosity is also referred to as color saturation. And I'm assuming that's what you're referring to. Color saturation, its intensity versus its value. Now this is the hardest thing for students to get. And so here's, let's see if we can get a good example on camera. I don't know. Let me see. I want to make sure my swatches are in. Oh, okay, great. There. Okay, so if we take this green here, I would refer to that as a very intense, I don't like that mark that I just put, very intense, very highly saturated. Another word that gets used is chroma, green. So let's pick another green that relatively, I'm going to pick this one, that's too dark, that's relatively the same in value. Now if we squint at that line, I think they're pretty close. Let me see if I can come a little bit closer. Here we go. This one. This one is a little bit darker, just a teeny bit darker in value than this one, but not much. Because you can see when you put them side by side, see how they dive into one another? It's hard to see the difference in value. So versus something that's really, so here's a big difference in value. Right, that's a big difference in value because this is really sharp. This is close in value. But this one is much more intense. It has more saturation. Now see, that is, for my painting, that is a big, big deal. I'm orchestrating the intensities of the colors. Now, because if I wasn't doing that, a lot of times you can see kind of paintings that have an amateurish feel, to be honest, when the intensity of them is all the same. Everything's screaming, everything's intense, bright. And that, that really is, figuring this piece out is huge. Once you figure that piece out, then you're on your way to really having a lot more control of your paintings, and you know, frankly, it's going to take your painting up a notch or two. Okay, so now one last thing I want to do, and then I think what time is it? Do we have, how much time do I have?
10 minutes.
Oh, okay, good. I'm just going to come a little bit more bright on the top of these trees. Let me see, do I want a bright yellow? See, this is, see, this is another example. These two yellows, well, this one's darker. Let's see if I can find one that's kind of the same in value. And this one's really dirty, but this one and this one. And this one's a little bit lighter. Not much. Yellow loses its color identity really fast. Let's see. This one, this is going to be the good example. This one and this one. This one's a lot more intense. They're kind of close in value. That's what we're talking about. So now I'm going to just get some little bits that are light. I like it.
We have Jennifer asking about the workshop, since I'm so excited about it, and we just talked about it. You can just say a little bit about it.
Yes. This year in 2018, we're adding something a little bit different to pastelpaintinglessons.com, and that is we are going to be offering in-depth workshops. And what those are going to be, more like an online workshop than a lesson. And we're almost ready to roll out the first one, and it's entitled Making Your Mark. So this is actually a good segue into that lesson, to that workshop. That will be a format where you'll get the links. You'll be given links to several videos. Making Your Mark has 4 separate, well, they're not separate, they're related, but it's 4 videos which I give you instruction to watch in a certain order, and you'll have an assignment, which is kind of different from the paint and watch lessons. You'll have an assignment and you'll have a deadline. So you want to meet that deadline so that you can participate in the live critique session, which will be scheduled, and you upload your work. You'll be able to upload your work, and the other people that are participating in the workshop can, you guys can give each other feedback, and I'll be doing, as I said, a live critique. And you can tune in for that. If you can't tune in for that, then you can definitely, you'll be given a link to a recording so you can watch it later. But it's a lot more of a workshop, really in depth. The first one here, Making Your Mark, has, like I said, 4 videos. It has about 15 pages of documentation and support materials. So it's pretty in depth, and it's I'm really, really excited about being able to bring that kind of content to you guys. That's, you know, really, really rich, and get to spend a little bit more time with you.
I have about 3 minutes left.
Okay. Yeah, my intent this year is to really step it up and bring some richer content to you guys. Not so this lesson in particular, a lot of you guys are like, oh well, what am I going to get at just copying your paintings? Well, I do think that people's work that you admire, it's a very time-honored way of learning art, but I know that people also have a great desire to really hone their own style and get their and that's my intent for this upcoming year in the lessons, to really help people find their own individual voice.
We got to the magic point. I always look at this and I see you start with a blank slate and the, you know, loose drawing before, and I take pictures throughout, and then all of a sudden I look at it in one picture, it's like magic. It's turned into a thing. It's awesome.
Oh, thanks.
We do have one more question about luminosity, and then
yeah.
Do you mind talking about your stand a little bit? And we had one about framing and matting, but I was wondering if that might be a better thing addressed on Wednesday.
Yeah, framing and matting is a whole kind of deal.
Let me give you the luminosity question
Okay.
here. And this is a follow-up to the
Yep.
previous thing.
Yep.
Does luminosity mean they have to be in the same color family, or can I use different primaries with similar values? Do certain gestural lines with luminosity create different movements?
Okay, that sounds like a lot of questions in there. So luminosity, to really get luminosity in a painting, one thing I think, all right, let's just talk about a value mass. Let's talk about this dark. It's got some different values in it, a little bit of a range of values, but to say this value mass, I have used a couple different hues. I've used a kind of reddish dark and a bluish dark, and in any value mass I'm going to do that. I don't want to paint something just one flat color. In order to get luminosity, I want to, and painterly aspect, I want to add more than one. See, I might add 2 or 3 different hues within a value mass that are similar in value. They might have different intensities also. In this case, they're all about the same intensity. So this one, and this one, a little bit of a range of values, but you know, they're in the same sort of ballpark. They're also in the sort of same ballpark in terms of intensity. Now, if I were to paint a value mass with these two, that would be good. I've got this, and then I've got, let's see, where's that stick that I used? I don't know, where did it go? Was this it? Yeah, this was it. This. So I'm going to do something like this. That's better than just one flat color. So I want to have a mix of intensities and hues. I could add a different hue family in there. I could add I could add a blue in here. It's about the same value. Could add that in there. And that's going to give me more luminosity than using any flat color, than using just that, or using just that, or using just that. So in this little area, I put down this, and then I put down some of this. And that's what's so cool about pastel, is it does it really well. And it's that much more interesting than just one flat color.
All right.
Okay. All right, you guys. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed it. I enjoyed painting. This one was really fun. I like how this turned out. It's nice and atmospheric. This is pretty good. I would probably say that I got a little carried away in some of that, but I think it's okay. And yeah, so this is fun. I think that this has turned out nice out here. All right. I will talk to you guys soon.
Thank you.
Bye.